Did you ever want to do MMA or?
I did MMA.
You did actually MMA.
Yeah. So
how many fights did you do?
Just one, undefeated.
Okay. Undefeated and walked away and retired.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of different weird nerds.
Yeah.
We all come together.
Who are these people? This is
the Iowa corn-fed people.
Yeah, the corn-fed
here.
people. Like
nothing. You can be like, oh, nothing matters, or you can be like, nothing matters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here today with Carsten Carlsen. He's a black belt under, who are you black belt under?
Aaron Milam.
Aaron Milam. He's owner of Renzo Gracie Academy, Des Moines. Before that, Renzo Gracie Academy, Portland.
I did not own, but
you didn't own,
there.
But you coached there.
Aaron is the owner there.
Aaron was the owner there.
I was his
and accomplished Jiu Jitsu competitor as well. Bronze at ADCC trials in 2016. 2016. So I told him a lot of people are going to be interested to see this show. He doesn't believe it. But I know a lot of people have reached out to me or messaged me that said this was a guest they wanted to see. Carsten moved to Des Moines a few years ago, and as soon as I started rolling with you and we were both trying to Darce each other, I was like, this guy's great.
This is it. Yeah.
He's a cool guy. And so I've always been excited to see growth in Des Moines Jiu Jitsu, and he was like pouring rocket fuel on the fire, and started a whole new academy in Des Moines, and has been a great part of the Jiu Jitsu community here, and a nice guy, and hopefully he'll even maybe let me call him a friend, but
Absolutely.
And we got to hang out at ADCC trials that I competed at, and kind of get to know each other a little bit more there when we were in Vegas. So interesting all-around guy, and excited to talk about him. Wanted to first kind of hear about your life, just a kind of quick chronology, like where you come from, what things you've done. You were a college wrestler as well. I know a few other little things about you, but I know people will be interested to hear just a little chronology.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me, first off. This will be my first podcast ever, so hopefully I don't embarrass myself too much. So started off, I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Lived there until I went to college, University of Wisconsin-Platteville, which is a very, very small town in Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin. Studied criminal justice and psychology, got a degree in both of those, bachelor degree in both of those, and then wrestled for 4 years with a year break in between, so 5 total years of college. And I guess I wrestled in high school as well. I started around 13 years old, had mixed success. I was a state qualifier in high school, and that really, more than anything, was what kind of propelled me to be like, all right, maybe I can try this in college. And it was like starting all over again. So I was trash at the beginning and tried to slowly work my way up, and actually quit for a year and then came back and ended up doing okay. But as I am wont to do in high level competition, I kind of shit the bed in my conference tournament, being ranked 9th in the nation, and just didn't even make it to nationals. So after that, went back to Madison. I worked in the juvenile justice system for a couple of years, as well as coaching wrestling and working at Barnes & Noble. So I was a counselor at a group home for delinquent boys. And after several years of working 3 jobs and just...
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
That must have really prepared you to run a jiu-jitsu studio.
Yeah, a lot of delinquents in the jiu-jitsu community. It was interesting. I mean, it was I would say, from even in the moment, like in retrospect, it's a very hard job. At least it was for me.
I bet that'd be mentally taxing, big time.
Exactly, yeah,
big time.
There are more cases where the kids don't end up doing well than there are where they do. When you get the ones who actually, will, learn from the lessons that you try and teach them in this group home setting, or what they've learned previously in more of a actual detention facility, because typically what would happen would they would be coming from either the court system or a detention facility into this group home, and this would be like the last stage before they would get to go back to their family. And if they failed at living in the group home through, if they were getting in fights or they were just breaking all the rules, they weren't really, living in the structure that we had provided for them, they would either go back to a detention facility or potentially go to some other, maybe more secure setting than what we had. It was a lockdown house, but it wasn't like we could lock kids in a cell or anything like that. It was actually a really old house, a big house with, I think there was 4 bedrooms upstairs, but each bedroom housed 3 to 5 kids. So the most we had when I was working there was 9 or 10, ages between, I think the youngest we ever had was 12 or 13 to 19. We had a couple kids who turned 19 in the group home, and for whatever reason still had to be within the system. Maybe it was they weren't safe or regarded as safe to leave. I'm not entirely sure of what the legal statute is there, but it was a lot of like preparing them for life outside of this setting. How do you clean clothes? How do you clean yourself? How do you cook? How do you live on your own? Because a lot of these kids didn't have a lot of structure to go home to, and the biggest thing was just there are consequences for your actions. Those consequences can be positive or negative. And if you have an action that is perceived as negative by society, then you're going to receive a negative consequence. And, in the group home setting, it's like the worst it gets is, you have an allotted amount of time to do chores. Or obviously the worst it gets, you leave. But in the group home, you have X amount of time to do chores, and you could work off that time, and then you're back to having whatever freedom it is that is provided within that context. So
that's got to be hard because, my heart bleeds for people that got off on the wrong foot, had the wrong kind of upbringing.
Yep.
You see them as a victim, and then slowly as they become an adult, you just kind of see them as a perpetrator now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And continuing the karmic cycle, and passing it down. And you want to do something, and that we have these different programs and this and that, but like you said, unfortunately the success rate, is just going to be low because so many people are going to be not savable, at least in the way that we have our structure and the way that we try and save people in that way,
at least from my perspective in the limited time that I had there, a big part of it was if you are in any kind of perceived position of authority, whatever you say, no matter how logical or reasonable it sounds, is not to be heeded. You're the authority. You're what this kid has seen as somebody who's broken apart their family, who's discriminated against them. You're somebody who is, as a you, as the general you, is the person that has, at least maybe even in their family, I might be reaching a little bit, but that's who they've been told is that's the bad guy, so we're the bad guy. Whatever we say, they didn't do anything wrong. It's our fault. We're just picking on them type of thing. I saw that a lot in that system, in that specific situation.
So just getting them out of that general way of thinking, that general heuristic, just getting them out of that, that and other patterns of thinking,
trying to,
yeah.
And I think it was, for some kids, it was easier than others, obviously, but there were some kids you could tell right away, and they didn't last long, but it was, they would placate you up to a certain point, and then once they, broke a rule or pushed a boundary too far, I tried to be as by the book and structured as I could in this setting, because I felt like any variance, if I was more lenient with one kid or on one rule set than others, then that could be used against you in that setting. Those kids were smart. They knew if you bent in some regard, they're going to be able to take advantage of it. And when you had kids who were in there for sexual assault, battery, like they were in there for bad things. Some of them were in there for innocuous stuff, but there were some ones that were pretty serious offenders on their way out of the system. And if they knew that they could manipulate you in any way, then they would. So I had to be as strict as possible. And when the kids would come up against that strictness, it would be automatically like, you're picking on me. Some kids, I'm not saying all of them, but there would be that shift of like, we're cool to, fuck you, you're a dick, you're just...
You didn't have to use Jiu Jitsu on any of them?
I didn't know Jiu Jitsu at the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is you're just wrestling at this point, right?
Yeah, so this is when I was...
Didn't have to use your wrestling on anyone?
No wrestling. Well, that's not true. I had to break up a fight one time, but the way that the rules of the group home were, like, I couldn't technically put hands. It was like an automatic reaction that I did where I pulled them apart. Like, I wasn't supposed to put hands on anybody unless I'm like defending myself. You're supposed to just call the police if there's a physical altercation. And so I broke them apart, and then I called the police, and they tried to play it off like it wasn't anything. Like, we were just messing around. It's like, no, you weren't messing around. I know what a fight looks like. But I don't know. I mean, I value that experience in my life very much. I think it gave me a lot of empathy toward just people in general, and being able to see from that age, my age at that time, which I was 23 to 25, 22 to 25, somewhere in there, that, the people that you see on the street that are homeless or, that might be arrested for whatever reason, they were those kids that I worked with at some point. At least there's a potential there. Like, and I see that when I read their file, it's like, oh, they're abused, whether it's sexually or physically, emotionally by whoever. And they're a product of their environment. And unfortunately, sometimes that leads them down a path where it's addiction or it's, psychosis or like some sort of issue that kind of puts them outside society. And, now they're looked down on by a large part of the population because they only see them at that point. I try and, as best I can, I'm not perfect, but I try and see people as like, oh, you probably had a shit upbringing.
Yeah, at one point, you see, and I know you have a kid and I have two kids, and it's like you see the world through their eyes and you think how innocent they are, and we can all empathize with children, and we can all imagine, this homeless person here, you zoom back on the timeline a little bit, and you see an innocent little kid just going through things that an innocent kid shouldn't have to ever deal with.
Absolutely.
And then you just go, damn.
It sucks.
We talked about it actually last show. It's just a karmic phenomenon. It's just a happening. It's not, casting judgment on other people and where they're at. That's tricky business.
It is, and it brings to mind a conversation that my wife and I had relatively recently about at what point in a person's life, an adult's life, do you have that shift of like, you are a product of, you're always a product of your surroundings and your upbringing, but at what point is your behavior primarily your responsibility, you know?
When you go victim to perpetrator.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you said before. Yeah. So, is there like a particular age? Is there like a stage in your life? It's such a hard thing to put a pin on, It's not like you could be like, oh, 24.
They're overlaid.
Now it's you. Yeah.
They're overlaid, and then these patterns form, and if you can't break the patterns of people's thinking.
Yep. You can't do it for them.
They have a mind virus, in some way, to use a kind of modern term.
Yeah, and then, everybody's got a different rock bottom depending on your situation. And I guess I'm speaking more to addiction, having dealt with that in both my wife and my families. So seeing that, that kind of mentality of, and I've had it too. I had it when I was younger of like, it's, my problems are other people's fault. Like they're the ones who did this to me kind of thing. And like having everybody's got their own tipping point to where they have to decide for themselves, like, well, I'm the only one who's going to decide what happens in the rest of my life, you know.
Yeah.
If I put that in somebody else's hands, like,
You're playing, and the other side of it is,
Yeah.
when does that person really have the capability to go, I have to break this karmic chain?
yeah,
And it may be so heavy that they say, I'm not going to break it. I'm
'Cause
just
it's
going to
hard.
do drugs, or
Yeah.
I'm just going to live this type of a life here, or I'm going to become a perpetrator of the same crimes that were perpetrated against me. And, you know, because the karmic debt that they're in, they look back and they say, that's too much.
yeah.
They don't want to
When you say
turn the ship.
karmic debt, is that you speaking specifically to their life, or the chain?
Just the
It goes
chain,
all the way
the
through,
chain
like
that goes through
yeah.
the intergenerational trauma, and the chain that goes through, and even their epigenetics get affected, like, you know, as we're learning. And yeah, they just have a lot of work to do.
That might not be all their work. Yeah.
Yeah, they may go, damn, that's too much work. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Especially when you're carrying your
And-
your caregiver's work as well, your parents' work.
And some generations kind of, you know, again, not judging back on like your own family history, you think like, if they moved the needle this much, then the next generation moved it this much, and then maybe the next one moved it a whole lot, you know, or something like that. So
Yeah.
I kind of look at it as karmic, because it just means, you know, the inherent emotions and ways of thinking and the information that's just passed down, you know, how it's passed down.
Absolutely.
So
Do you feel like there's a, because it seems like to me now there's, and this might be with social media, but also with the mainstream acceptance of psychological health and well-being, like how, you know, there's advertisements everywhere for, you know, psychologists or therapists that you can do on your phone. You know, you have an app for it. Like, do you think that there's more of a, like that needle moving you were talking about? Do you feel like there's this generation, whether it's ours or the next, is going to be that big needle mover on the whole? Or, you know, then we can talk about a little bit more of having the capability to do something, whereas maybe your effort might not kind of reach into that capability. Like you have a large space to work within, but if you only want to do a portion of that work, then
well, imagine how
hard
much
to do.
debt you're in terms of the effort that you have to put in. If you're already addicted to drugs, you're like, that's a lot of effort to get off drugs now.
Yeah.
Plus, maybe you're already have no finances now because of all your decisions, and then you already have terrible health, and or you have, and you're just like, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm more speaking to and asking you, like, do you feel like there's a shift in society?
I feel
as
like
a whole, instead of
I feel like it's hard to say, because you could have a downward shift before you have a big, you know, upward move. You know, it could be very dynamic when you're talking about where all of society is. But I do think that we're going to either move in a positive direction. I think we're becoming more extreme in our capabilities and our ability to impact the planet and other people, in terms of whether it's social media or nuclear power or whatever you're talking about, any kind of innovations we keep making. These are still relatively new. And I think we're just more extreme. We're the most extreme beings on the planet, and we're extreme in terms of, as we move on here, we're either going to destroy ourselves or we're going to move to a better place.
yeah.
You know, because we're going to, in order to solve any of the challenges that we have, we're going to have to come together under common, I guess, and work together in some way, whether it's through, you know, businesses interacting with each other through commerce and solve that way, or through freaking UN or
Yeah.
whatever, like, you know, because we have the ability to just nuke each other to oblivion and this and that. But the people, the individual people, one off individually, they're good, but, you know, put people together and they can become kind of destructive like that. And that's a bigger karmic debt that we're in right now. You have to ask yourself, how much karmic debt does the planet have?
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
and as humanity have. So now any individual person looking to make an impact, they're looking and going, I can't do shit. And so
Yeah.
people are getting turned away from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you look at anything in the largest picture possible, it's going to be a lot too much to handle for most people, right?
Yeah.
That's why you kind of
I
have to
guess if they went even larger and
smaller,
they could see, they could easily get into nihilistic thinking. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
if they go way larger, they're like,
You know, what's
we're
the
just
point of anything?
Yeah.
You know,
It's like that song I like, which is "All We Are Is Dust in the Wind."
nice.
I think it's Kansas.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that, and I said they should be played at my funeral.
that's a good one. There's I believe it was a physicist, and I'm not going to remember the name, but I was reading a book one time where this person who talked about life in the universe, and this is kind of more of what I like to think about life in the universe and us in general. Like, we are, the sliver of light in a sea of unending darkness. In terms of conscious life, we're able to experience all of this and have thoughts about it, even if it is all a simulation.
Yeah.
We're still be able to, I'm present in this moment. You're present in this moment, or at least I assume
Yeah,
you are.
you're given a character, like, enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I guess when I zoom out to the largest picture, that's kind of what I see, as opposed to, nothing matters because we're just dust in the wind. That's true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're a conscious mode of dust in the wind, and might as well take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, how you contextualize it is everything, and how you view it, because you can be optimistic and go, nothing. You can be like, oh, nothing matters, or you can be like, nothing matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what a huge relief.
Yeah.
What a huge relief that none of this matters.
When,
we're all
when
playing games.
it all ends.
Like, we're just these talking sentient beings having a good time on this rock, and
and we'll just get to be another part of the universal consciousness in the end.
Yes, we'll go back to the pool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Recycle somewhere else down the
Yep.
line. But back to, I know we got on
yes, your timeline.
Huge off track. Yeah.
That's okay. We like to do that on this show. It's now a theme.
I like that too.
Yeah.
So ended up at a certain point. It was actually back when I first started working at Barnes & Noble. I saw a book in the store, Oregon, just like a picture book of photos from Oregon.
Yeah.
And I saw on the cover was Portland, and you could see the Mount Hood in the distance. You could see the river, the Willamette River, through downtown. And I was like, that looks like a cool place to live. I'd never, I don't know, maybe I'd heard of Portland at that time. I think it was, so that would have been 2005. I don't think I ever heard of Portland. And I definitely thought Oregon was called Oregon because there was an Oregon, Wisconsin that was directly south of Madison. But I had that in my head. Fast forward back to when we were talking about doing the juvenile justice system, and I felt like I was treading water, and my mom actually sparked this fire in me that she said, my sister was about to graduate college, and she said, oh, Carsten always talked about moving away, but he's actually the one who's staying in town, and my sister is gonna be going off, to some other far off place. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? I'm out. I'm done. And I think I saved up money for like 6 months. Just worked my ass off, and ended up selling as much stuff as I could, packed up a backpack, and in the summer of, so I think it was June of 2011, got on a plane and just flew to Portland, just left everything and decided to venture out on my own, and got off the plane.
Just because you thought it was pretty?
Yeah, just because I thought it was pretty. I'd driven out there with a friend to check it out the 6 months prior to moving there, and was like, yeah, this looks pretty cool.
That's
Actually,
cool.
It wasn't even 6 months. It was only 4 months before, and I said, this looks pretty cool. I've never lived in a big city, and as big as Portland's like 2 million metro, which is way bigger than Madison. So, and Platteville, the place that I went to college, is, I mean, the town itself was like 8,000 people, so it was really small. But yeah, got off the plane and was like, oh wow, okay, I'm really on my own, and it felt really good. And I went to a hostel and stayed there for like 4 nights while I rented a bike and biked around the city looking for places to live, and ended up finding a place that, just as chance would have it, was right down the street from an MMA gym. And I went in my second week of living in Portland. I went into that gym. It's called Alive MMA, and asked them if they needed any help with their wrestling program. And a guy named Nick Gilardi was the head of their MMA organization, or their fight team, and introduced myself to him. And he said, come in for a practice and, we'll test you out, see if you're any good at wrestling, because you could just be some bum off the street.
Yeah.
And so I held my own and, showed them some stuff, and they invited me to come help coach their MMA wrestling.
They didn't guillotine choke you or anything like that?
No, it was
they just wrestled.
We just wrestled, yeah.
Yes.
We just wrestled. And I can't remember what Nick was. I think he placed in Oregon State, or maybe he was even a state champion, but he was a really good wrestler, super solid guy. He's still in MMA coach in Oregon now, just for a different team. But yeah, and that's kind of how I started down the path toward jiu-jitsu.
You start training at that gym?
I started training at that gym, yeah. So I started first with just the wrestling for MMA. Then I would jump into like some of the MMA rounds, not full sparring, but like some of the ground rounds and stuff. And then trickled into a jiu-jitsu class maybe, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months after starting to help there.
Did you ever want to do MMA or?
I did MMA.
You did actually MMA.
Yeah. So
how many fights did you do?
Just one, undefeated.
Okay. Undefeated and walked away and retired.
Yeah, exactly. Got knocked on my ass in the first. I was like saying this because I'm joking around when I'm being facetious about undefeated and everything. I got knocked on my ass in the first like 3 seconds of the fight. Like I had an interesting. I get nervous before wrestling matches, before jiu-jitsu matches, and like most people, and I didn't feel almost any nerves before my fight. I felt like really numb, and I walked out there and, bell rings and I go across the cage and I throw a jab and he counters with another one, and I walked right into it and fell on my butt and was like, oh, I'm in a fight. I gotta be on it now.
It woke you up, right?
It definitely woke me up. Yeah, it definitely woke me up. And then I ended up getting a Kimura a couple minutes into the first round. But it was, I enjoyed the experience of fighting quite a bit. The training that they had there was old school in terms of there was a limited amount of technical drilling time, and it was primarily, at least in the practices that I remember going to, primarily it was, put your gloves on, shin pads or gloves, and that's it.
Just fight.
Yeah. You have some people that were good training partners and some people that were just there to fight. And I didn't enjoy the training as much as I enjoyed the fight itself. So I enjoyed jiu-jitsu more. And, the stereotypical, like, I didn't enjoy getting punched in the face, and I'd rather just grapple because that's what I was comfortable with.
I took too many headshots throughout my MMA career, football, everything else. I was like I was starting to get dizzy for longer because I could eat heavy shots.
Yeah.
And that was a problem though, because then I was eating heavy shots.
Why work on defense when you can take every punch that comes at you?
Homer Simpson.
Yeah, exactly.
Off defense, right?
Yeah. Just make them tired.
But no, I learned how to be pretty defensive on the feet against like really good strikers. But I was doing like some pro fights and stuff like that too.
You had
people really punching me in the head. 10
pro fights?
Not pro. I was doing them back here in Iowa in a time when there was no actual line. And I would fight people that were kind of at a pro level at times, but my actual pro record is I think 1-1.
Okay.
Is what they actually like counted like on some websites that I saw. Like they were like,
these ones were the typology for you.
Yeah, but then some of them have like 4 of my amateur fights, but I've actually done like 14 something amateur fights.
Okay.
Like, at some of those times I wasn't trained to anything other than wrestling, really.
Do you feel like
I started training, some of the latter ones I was a more trained fighter.
Uh-huh.
I had to learn boxing, yeah.
Do you feel like if you didn't have that head trauma, you would have continued?
Well, I still want to run out there and just M&R roll somebody at like an MCC.
Yeah.
They make me do pro now since I did pro.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to pick off some jabroni. So.
Yeah.
But like, I'm thinking, there's a good amount of people I could probably go out there and
do well against.
Do well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean I should do it necessarily.
Yeah.
Because then when you start like just, I feel like if I started just getting cut up everywhere and everything, I'd be like, I'd have to look at myself in the mirror and be like, you're almost 40. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why'd you just fuck your whole head and your face up? So I use my brain too.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
A lot. And I'll think that when I get hit, I'll be like, God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about it and it's cumulative and I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just said, fuck it. I got hit enough.
Yeah. I think I might be being obviously selfish or foolish, but I've started training with Vic, who owns Absolute Martial Arts and Fitness.
Yes, we're going to have him on.
Yeah. He's a fantastic person, human being and coach, all around, just great guy. But I started training with him and Rick Glenn, who fights in the UFC.
Yes, and you cornered for him two times now,
a couple
right?
times, yeah.
Yeah.
He was nice enough to let me tag along to the UFC events.
You said that was like bucket list stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels like...
it's on my bucket list too, if there's any UFC fighters out there that need need a corner. I loved really, cornering whenever I did it.
Yeah, it feels like being a part of, if you're a fan of the NFL. I'm a huge fan of fighting, and it feels like I, was a part of the NFL. The UFC is the NFL of football. So,
I mean, like ESPN's there, and all the press is there.
Yeah,
and you had like your
kit,
your clothing is all like matching as like the corner person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get an unbelievable amount of free stuff. It was wild to me how much free stuff you get. Giant duffel bag and like a bunch of...
It's like brands and stuff trying to...
Yeah, I mean, it's all Venom because that's their partnership. But it's still... It was wild to me how much free stuff you get. But I started training with those guys to help Rick, and I wanted to be a little bit more well-rounded. And I've dabbled in striking for over the past 4 years or so, but it's more recently I've been doing full MMA sparring with those guys and not going hard like we did back when I was first fighting. But I'm well aware of the head trauma piece. But
I have. Are you thinking about doing one?
Not a full fight. I'm thinking about potentially doing like a kickboxing smoker, just to scratch that itch. Do something that scares me a little bit because I've never done just a strictly stand-up fight, and I'm not at the point, or at least I don't feel like I'm at the point where I feel comfortable doing it at this moment. But maybe early next year, I might. So.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that.
See me punched in the face a whole bunch. Hopefully not knocked out. That's
no. I bet you're going to be very tactical. I mean, when you start thinking about striking, I was making a joke to somebody one time, but I'm like, striking is almost, has some complexity to it. There's like, I was like, you can also it's almost Jiu Jitsu. Like,
yes.
Like I was kind of making a joke. I was like, you can kind of think about it like Jiu Jitsu because you can really break down with your timing. And they're like, yeah, that's just striking.
That's striking. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of similarities. Obviously, it's another martial art. You can refine it more as far as Thai boxing or
you've got guards still. You've got ways of countering versus
setting traps and
versus blocking versus countering versus things like that. And
you have feints. You have all kinds of of stuff. But I've really enjoyed and had kind of a resurgence of a love of, well, I guess even more just a blossoming of a love for striking and understanding it a little bit more on a higher level. Not that I'm at any kind of near high level right now, but having people to learn from like Rick and Vic and another guy who coached me for a little bit when I first moved here was a guy named Ryan Clark, who's been around the scene for a long time. Also a really good striking coach. He does personal training, Strive Fitness, Strive. I think it's called Strive. Personal training or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a lot of fun.
This is why more and more special things are kind of come out of Des Moines, just because you're going to Vic's gym, which is MMA gym, and helping there, but then he's coming to your gym and training there too, and Ricky Glenn's coming to your gym and going to that gym.
Yeah.
I'm going to your gym and going to Des Moines Jiu Jitsu. Other people are just, it's really something special about this community, and I don't think people understand, that what kind of getting unlocked, and by getting you, like I'm excited about seeing you now helping out some of our local MMA fighters, especially UFC, fighters, and be able to dial in their jiu-jitsu and learning the striking, which also is going to help you fit in the wrestling, because it's all one big blended overlaid
absolutely
mess in there, so but yeah, I can already see the gains that they've made training. I don't know with you, but definitely the grappling has made big gains. Ricky Glenn, I thought definitely, and we're gonna have him on the show too.
That'd be great.
We just talked about him last podcast too.
Nice.
Funny.
He's a phenomenal person as well. Yeah, I think back to what you're talking about with the Des Moines scene, coming from Portland, we had I guess the big difference that I feel there was at the gym that I ended up in Portland, and we can revisit this later in terms of how I progressed, but it was Renzo Gracie, Portland. Aaron Milam, he's the owner, head instructor.
Yep.
He's a black belt under Renzo and John Danaher. And he, when he first moved to town, he started an open mat on Sundays. And originally it was kind of to bring people to him. Like it was he did like a black and brown belt only open mat. And then after that was a everybody open mat. So I think it was 2 hours total, and black and browns first and then everybody. And that was like the community open mat we have here, but it was every week. And eventually he decided to transition out of having that weekly open mat and just have a regular class. And then kind of simultaneously 10th Planet in Portland, which is owned by a good friend of mine, Phil Schwartz. He started his own open mat on Fridays, and that kind of became like the Portland area open mat, and everybody started going to that.
Is that where you started calling the workshop?
The workshop was, so Aaron, when he started his own gym with another guy named Jin Young, they wanted to open a gym in Manhattan. And as far as I understand it, you can't have a Renzo Gracie in Manhattan outside of the original Renzo Gracie, like the main school. Up until recently, I think there's an Upper West Side one now, but so they started their own gym under this workshop banner, and they created that, and now it's branched out to several different locations. There's one, Portland, New York. Jin still runs New York. Portland's Aaron. Honolulu, Hawaii is a guy named Larry Hope, who's probably one of the more inventive, if not the most inventive people I've ever encountered in jiu-jitsu. A lot of that octopus stuff that we've been doing, I stole that from him, or at least, it sparked it.
Yeah, that's a way deeper web than I ever imagined.
It's an interesting position. He's exceptional at it. And then there's one in Seattle, one in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I want to say maybe 2 in Germany now. Aaron's got a connection out in Germany.
Okay.
That he's gone out there and taught seminars several times, and they started one
and
or two
so
out
a
there.
Gym can fly the
And then
Renzo Gracie and the workshop banner. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think just because it's a sub, I guess it's the main and then the sub. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
I always wondered I thought
does.
it was you guys just got together and worked on things.
Yeah,
I didn't
that
even
too.
know where workshop
that too.
came from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of mentality is what Aaron and Jen started with. Workshop, like let's all work on it together, and I really like that mentality. Obviously, we have it here, and having time for that in your open mats or what have you. And one of the classes that I have is on Thursdays evenings is very much oriented that way. It's you come in, you drill what you want to drill. There's a structure in terms of like the amount of time that you have to drill it, but for the most part it's free, and we all can workshop stuff together. But back to the Des Moines and the uniqueness here. for those places, the main difference I felt like was there was a one location, right? One place planted its flag and was like, everybody come here.
Mm-hmm.
And here there's so much of this, cross-pollination, like people going to other gyms and training and like learning stuff from each other and like
Mm-hmm.
getting together and being able to workshop things. But the community open mat where it's not a single location, everybody has their turn, now there's even more with Elite Edge hosting it just recently, it was you guys, Des Moines Jiu Jitsu, us, No Coast, and Absolute. The fact that each one of those gyms has a turn to host this open mat, I find that extremely unique, and that everybody's welcome to come to these types of scenarios.
We just get to schedule our dojo storm.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
We're like, oh, there's a time and a date and a place.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, we all come together,
it's
and
more civil.
You
dojo
meet
storm.
new people. What's crazy about those open mats is I'm always meeting new dangerous people. I'm just like, who are you?
Yeah, right. Where have you been training?
Yeah, we've been training. So just like there's a whole bunch of just random purple belt, not random, but they're people training around here.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be a much smaller knit amount of people that were even training at all.
Yeah.
Even when I moved here at the end of like 2011, when I moved to Des Moines. And you moved here when?
2019.
2019.
August, late August 2019.
Yeah. Like I said, I was pumped for that because I knew that would be even better for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been growing that gym you're at your second location?
Technically our third, but
It's technically your third.
Yeah.
I feel like No Coast is on their like third or fourth.
Yeah.
But like they keep getting bigger, and I'm just like, I see your
They're
gym
huge
too.
now.
Like, I'm like, you could really use some more mat space too. Because
Yeah.
some of these, especially the open mats, obviously.
Oh yeah. I mean, when there's 50 people at the gym, it's kind of hard to
hard
to fit
That's
that.
a
We
lot.
don't have a huge space, so.
But NOCO's got a pretty big one now.
Yeah, I'm excited for them. To have.
We've always had a lot of mat space at
Mm-hmm.
the Moines Jiu Jitsu Academy too. And yeah, your gym has grown from, it was like an upstairs above a CrossFit place when I first went
Mm-hmm.
into it.
So I actually came out here to check the place out, check Des Moines out. In terms of my wife and I knew we were moving here, but I came out in, I think it was June of 2019 for the Subspectrum, one of their absolutes. Jordan was nice enough to let me compete, and I had a subpar showing, but it was
What'd you do? Get second?
No, I lost my first match to a guy named Mario Gonzalez. So it's funny because Jordan paired, Mario got second at ADCC trials, and I got third at
So he
ADCC
paired you
trials
guys.
in two different weight classes, but he paired us up first match. And he beat me fair and square. I didn't, this was at the tail end of my...
That's a tough first match though.
It is, yeah. But it was at the tail end of my competitive career. Not to say that it's over completely, and I competed for the first time in a while last winter, but I didn't feel like I had the fire to really, I was listless in the match, and I just didn't really feel like trying hard.
Like the most recent one you did?
No, the one against
Talking about
Mario.
that one back in
Yeah,
Subspectrum.
Back in Subspectrum. So I felt bad that I wasn't able to represent myself as well as I could have, but
That's always a hard feeling when, especially when you're ready to do more work and you're just like, oh, I just came out a little flat. Like, fuck.
yeah, and I don't know. I mean, that was the match that really clued me into like, I just need to take a break from competition. I don't.
You weren't really your head wasn't really in it. Yeah.
Like I feel like there's when you're competing at a certain level, like against a certain level of people, and trying to be at that level of best in the world, or getting into ADCC, all that kind of stuff. I feel like there's got to be a fire in you that you got to be willing to hurt somebody, and that's the mentality that I had all of my previous competitions. But I had a moment where I got an armbar. I threw up a flying armbar at the end of the match, and it was one of those like dilated moments where you have an entire conversation in your head in the matter of half a second.
In midair.
Yeah, and I had his arm extended, and I was like, usually in these situations, I would just hip into it as hard as I can, and like, whatever happens, happens. But I had that moment of reservation where I was like, do I really want to break this guy's arm? And in that moment, he slipped out.
While you're like thinking.
Yeah. And that really tied it together for me. Like,
well, the young kids definitely, some of them are crazy. They compete in this sport, and they are like looking to wreck your body in a way humanly possible.
I've
like
been there. I've
it's
done
not
it,
about empathy. Yeah, we've both been more in that headspace. And actually, you and I had this conversation, like, because I think you're like a year older than me, something like that.
How old are you?
37.
Yeah, I'm 30. I turned 38 in October, so.
Okay, yeah.
We're about the same age.
Yeah. So, and we had this conversation when I was at ADCC trials there down in Vegas when we were at the Airbnb, and I was like, I'm just kind of enjoying my youth, Yeah. So that was when I had this like kind of resurgence, just like 2 years ago only, really, where I started wanting to compete more. And I don't have the old me. It's funny competing back then versus now. And I've told my wife, I'm like, she met me in high school, and like I was wrestling, and I was like, I bet you didn't think I would still be
competing this long,
doing the same thing, like going out on the mats, throwing down, complaining about how sore I am to you, and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, like it's been 18 plus 18 more years, like from back then, like twice as old now,
But it's I don't know. I mean, I think it's a valuable part of life, being able to compete in that setting where it's just you, and there's no team to support you. Obviously there's a team to support you in terms of your training and preparation, but once you're out on the mat, like it's all you. I think that is incredibly valuable, and everybody should do it at least once, in whatever setting, an individual setting, but I think that it helps you in all aspects of your life, having that experience. And back to what we were talking about of, individual responsibility and accepting that this is under your control to a certain extent.
Well, you're trying to do that now and compete in possibly a kickboxing match.
Yeah.
But you said something very interesting when you said that. It said it's because it scared you, and that it was a good clue to me that that you're somebody who's focused on like a growth mindset, because sometimes it's actually looking to things that scare you and being like, oh, that feeling right there that I'm having about being scared of doing X, Y, and Z, now growth is on the other side of that of some kind, overcoming, and even that's if you the fail. Growth mindset basically is almost to a point where you like, I could seek out things that make me scared. You know, it's like, growth is on the other side of a lot of these things that you build up and be scared of. And definitely took me till I was like, a very long time to actually get over like competition nerves, or not have them to where they're like terrible for even weeks sometimes leading up. Now I don't have any nerves until just like
right before the match.
Right, but like that day, everybody's kind of filing in, and I'm just like, okay, gotta do this today. And then I've added a whole new dialogue to that. That's always like, I can't believe I'm still doing this. What am I doing? All these kids out here trying to tear me apart. But that keeps me sharp. Like that forces my jiu-jitsu. It imposes that discipline if I know I have competitions coming up. So it's helped me dial in a lot lately.
I mean, that's one truth that I've found over the past several years, is that the older I get, the more disciplined I have to be if I want to be performing at a certain level in life in general, physically or mentally. I have to be very conscious of what I'm doing off the mat.
I always held that image in my head of, as I would get older, I would be doing more things to take care of myself. Like I always imagined I'd be raging against the night. And here I am. And I have like, some people have it's a mindset thing, almost back to our previous conversation about mindset. Like I feel like a lot of people, like my wife's parents, my parents, like they've always built up aging in their head. This happens, that happens, that happens. And I know I'm still not super old yet, but I'm not gonna like, it sounds bad, but I'm like, if I see fat coming on my body, I'm just making it disappear. Yeah. It doesn't matter the effort. It's more about maintaining the result. I've always aimed for the result, not necessarily a vain sense of, but But I mean, if I start feeling unathletic, I don't like that feeling.
You feel better.
I
Yeah,
don't feel athletic. I don't like that. And jiu-jitsu, since I love trying to solve the puzzle, I love trying to trick somebody to get them to do this, or to, you know, try and find some little detail to pin somebody down a little bit better. But since I like doing that puzzle, it forces me to then stay in shape and all these other things like I like to do anyways. So
well, you have a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
In terms of this.
If people knew how bad a shape, you know, they were in, they'd be doing stuff too, I think. Yeah. Like if you know that, you know, if your family's in trouble and you can't even carry one of them, or you can't run down the stairs even hardly, or run on your own, you're not testing your body, you know. But once you start testing your body in jiu-jitsu, you're like, oh, I'm aware of this now. And that would be powerful alone for people to at least try it once, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what I get most of the time is, as a gym owner, when people come in, they're like, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be, or like, There's another
human right there trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's way more challenging than a lot of people assume. Yeah. I'll admit that I thought of that about other things plenty of times. You know, striking was one of them. I was like, oh, this looks not simple, but like I could get
There's
this
only
quickly.
6 punches, basically, right?
And then then you get punched in the face a bunch, and you have no idea what you're doing, and you're disoriented, and then you take a liver shot, and you're down on the ground. So it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You know, you're overwhelmed with information, even if that information is distributed from a person who doesn't have a lot in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. You know, if you have none or 0.1% of information about jiu-jitsu, like, good luck. You're not going to do well.
Yeah.
Or anything, you know.
I was going to ask you about, you know, does it make you feel like a white belt, you know, training the stand-up again and get that excitement again? But then I thought more about it, and I was like, well, I still feel like a white belt doing jiu-jitsu because this shit's just like...
I try and have that conversation.
I go to bed at night sometimes and I think I don't know any jiu-jitsu. So.
Absolutely. I think I have that conversation with all levels of people who come into the gym, you know, where there are some days that you're going to feel like you're getting it, you're king of the world, and other days where you're going to feel like garbage. And I've told people all the time, like, sometimes I feel like throwing my belt away, you know, that I'm not a black belt and this is all a sham and jiu-jitsu doesn't work, and you know, but you stick with it long enough and the general trajectory is going up, even if the waves are
really, those challenges are rising. Like we're talking about fear, on the other side of that's growth, and obviously those challenges, that's part of the kind of self-doubt is a type of fear, you know, or doubting, you know, what you can accomplish. And but yeah, if you stick with it, the consistency will bear the results kind of on their own, and the questions will kind of get resolved over time, even if it's not on the time scale you wanted. It's like, oh, I just wanted to fix up my guard, and it's like 2 years later, you're like, I almost have fixed up this problem with my guard.
Yeah, one part. That's
so it can be frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you coach, right? Like, how many classes do you teach?
I teach every other Saturday and the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so do you have
and then I have a private lessons that I do.
Okay. Do you have newer people that come into your classes typically?
Sometimes, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a do you find that there are a decent amount of that population that come to you with, like, you know, oh, I'm so frustrated with this, and I'm so frustrated with, you know, XYZ part of this, or like, you know, I know I can be good, but I just need to know more. I hear this a lot, especially when people first come in. Yeah. And that whole attitude of, you know, you think you know more than you know, and how that...
Talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect.
What is that?
Like where you think, because you don't know that much about it.
Yes, yeah.
You think you know a whole lot. And that's kind of what you fall into after a while, is you start to know more about what you don't know. It's like, I've used the analogy of like fog. Like you're looking up, you think the summit of the mountain is at the end of the fog. Yeah. And then you start to walk and the fog's twice as far as it was by the time you get to it. And then it's even further because you realize how deep and never ending and infinite jiu-jitsu is, because we're pairing the two best supercomputers we have on the planet, two human brains and their bodies, and we're just boom, we're just
Going
like
at it. Yeah.
battle bots, we're going. And that's something that is an adaptive thing. It's going to grow and adapt and change. And
Absolutely.
that's something that like the competing has helped me do, is still make sure like things can still function in a modern context, like the 18-year-old kids trying to explode my ankles and stuff.
Yeah,
like
right.
this is helpful to me.
Those damn kids.
Because now it helps me explode ankles even all that much better, you know.
Right. The I likened jiu-jitsu to climbing a mountain. Previously, when I got my black belt, this is one of the first things that popped into my head is that you're along the same lines as like you have these summits that you see ahead of you, you know, this blue belt, purple belt, brown belt. And, you know, you see when you get there, like, oh, there's a little bit more of the mountain. Oh, there's a little bit more of the mountain. Or like, you know, there's a lot bit more of the mountain when you get to your blue belt, and like finally you get to your brown belt, like you're just under the summit. And you get your black belt, and that's like you put your hand on the summit, you pull yourself up, and you see that it's a giant forest, like full of trees, and you got all these trees you can go up and down, and you know, left and right and back and forth, and and how that's when you truly understand how limitless it can be. And some people can get here before they get the black belt. At least for
sure.
me, it was that really like. It threw away the governor on my understanding, or you know, my like there wasn't as much blinders on me. I could see everything all at once, and it was incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah.
But fantastic at the same time. Like you have no, you know, there's nothing to work toward now, except for the, you know, the ethereal like getting better, you know, or you're kind of. It's back to what we were talking about, where like the discipline is up to you. Like you got your black belt, you know, you could just go and be a fat POS now if you wanted to. You got your black belt, you know, or you could keep pushing yourself and expand your horizons and be more disciplined and like put yourself in bad positions.
If my game would have stopped evolving at black belt, then I would have been even worse, you know, now by all that much more, because everybody else keeps getting better. I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed, but you know, if I could get a time machine and find when I first got my blue belt and be like, here, like 2009 or something, like, here you go, face some of these blue belts from today.
Oh my God.
Who just cut me up. But I see it, like, I've seen it in Dragon Ball Z. Like, I've shared the thing on Instagram a few times. Like, each generation goes Super Saiyan younger.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I'm just like, yeah, what used to be basic is now, or what used to be advanced is now kind of like, oh yeah, okay.
There was somebody that got a lot of flack online about saying like a purple belt now could beat Hickson when he got his black belt or something like that. You know,
he's using better technology.
Yeah, I mean, people now,
Wouldn't
people
he
in 10 years
be
from
using
now,
better technology?
You think a purple belt? Now, I've rolled with purple belts that can, you know, outpace me and like have almost as good a technique. You know, like there's purple belts now that can beat black belts hands down. Not to say that Hickson is just any black belt, but you know, I think that's a pretty logical thing.
I ask people too, what if you use techniques that weren't even in the zeitgeist?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you buggy choked Hickson?
Yeah. Right.
Nowadays, he's of course going to be like, you know, he would know what was up, you know.
Yeah.
But
back in the day, or any of the top level people, like,
back in the day, but
throw Imanari roll into a inside heel hook.
We're talking about human brain, and
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about an evolutionary process, and people try and say I own all this jiu-jitsu, or this is all from. It's like you're a node on an evolutionary process. That big forest that you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
we're all exploring it and being like, here's what I found. I mapped out these.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, what'd you map out? You mapped out this.
Exactly.
Like, and you're going deep into these like drilling sessions you were talking about, which also can become like conversations and different strategy, tactics, technique discussion, or just sometimes just one little part of a technique that's the hitch that's stopping it from working for you.
Yeah, I mean,
that's one little detail.
I feel like that's what we're doing here.
Refining.
You know, we're all exploring the forest and coming together and trying to put pieces of the map together. You know, find the roots between them. Like I like that a lot. I think that's an exceptional and unique thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it brings together lots of different people that are a lot of different weird nerds.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all come together.
I love it. I love it. And I really feel lucky to have come into this community and that it's welcomed, that type of mindset. Because it could not. I mean, this could be a place where, back to when I first moved here, like when I reached out to each gym that I saw online and said like, hey, I'm coming here. I don't want to step on any toes. And I would, I don't have a place to train. Can I train at any of your gyms? And Chris David, the owner of Des Moines Jiu Jitsu, welcomed me in and, let me train there and until I got my gym up and running. And like that didn't have to happen. Everybody could have shut their doors when I moved here. And I could have been ostracized and like, who is this, jabroni from out of town who thinks he can just walk in and, he's not even from Iowa. Like,
Yeah.
Everybody could have just been like, don't train with this guy. And
Well,
that didn't happen at all.
The thing about Chris is the same thing about me. Like, we love the art and the game, and obviously we saw that you were skilled in the art, and we like to be around people that are skilled in the art. We don't like to make enemies out of people. Like, we like to get together and share ideas, and yeah,
it's a short-sighted way of thinking.
Right. Yeah. It's I guess it's even the longer term thinking, because now whether gyms want to or not, it's like their students are going to be either cross training or you're going to have people wanting to do these open mats. Like, there was obviously a huge need for them because we always pack these things, and it's now come to be quite popular, and it's got, like you said, like 5-6 gyms now involved in it. So
yeah, I mean, there's even more in town that could be that aren't, and I don't think it's because they're not, they want to insulate themselves. I think maybe they just haven't been invited to do so or recently. But I think it'll grow more and more. And, there might be some other person that comes into town that decides to open a gym that's, at an even higher level than any of us. And
yeah, John Donaher.
Yeah, exactly.
Might open one right here.
Yeah, exactly. He's got all the reasons to.
Once they find out all the wrestlers and other stuff that we're sitting on, they might come and mine. They might mine us for talent.
That's true.
You might want like the farm team. Like
literally.
We could be the Iowa Cubs.
Literally the farm team.
But for Donaher's Death Squad,
right.
Like Donaher's, instead of like Death Squad, maybe like Cuddle Squad or something like that. Not quite complete death.
Yeah, leg hooker squad.
Yeah. So,
but that brings back to again. We went on a tangent, but when I moved here, I think it was Jared from No Coast, the owner of No Coast, that told me to meet up with Rhonda from Talon Muay Thai, and that's where I started the first spot. I just rolled out some mats in there.
And you had a few classes per week, or?
Yeah, I mean, I started with a pretty full schedule. I think I had 3 noon classes and then an evening class every day. I just didn't have any weekend classes, or every weekday, I should say. And we grew, 3 months there, and she was nice enough to let me use her space for 3 months, and then we ended up finding the A-frame, and we're there for a year, and now moved to our present location.
On University.
Yeah, over on University, across from Wayland Cafe. And the present location is fantastic. I've got a great relationship with the building owner, and he built out, showers for us and everything. And it's a excellent, central location. It's a very industrial looking, brick inside.
Yeah, it's neat looking with like the rafters, and
yeah,
I get to look up there when you have me mounted. Before you choke me out.
Yeah.
I get to look up into the rafters.
It's a fun look.
Yeah.
There's some spider webs up there. But I don't know. I feel incredibly lucky to have found the spaces that I've found, to be in this community. And I mean, I just feel lucky in general with the entire evolution of my jiu-jitsu life. When I was in Oregon, and Aaron moved there 2 years after I did, Aaron Milam, and I was in the midst of kind of a crisis in terms of the gym that I was in. It was splintering, and I was looking for a different place to train. And a friend of mine, Corey Winkle, told me to come check out Aaron. And I had heard that there was a Renzo Gracie opening, and I had no idea who he was. But I went to train with him, and it was one of those, 20 minutes into class, like he was showing stuff that I'd never even thought of doing in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but this is a very funky guy.
He's super funky. Aaron
and then I learned more about, when I met Aaron, when he came into the seminar here, that helped me learn a lot more about your game. I was like, oh, that's why I'm always like trying to pin down, and I'm just like, there's something funky about it. I don't know. It's Aaron.
He's he's been referred to by many different names. I like to call him a dark wizard because a lot of his stuff is very brutal, I would say, is one of the best ways to describe it. But he's not a large person. He's back when I first started training with him, I think he was probably walking around at like 165, and he's very dynamic, athletic, and again, I refer to Larry as one of the more inventive people in jiu-jitsu. Aaron is his instructor. He, I think, kind of cultivated that kind of approach to jiu-jitsu because Aaron is incredibly inventive and thinks about jiu-jitsu in a way that I can't. I feel like I'm much more. I know I have a somewhat funky game, but it's not anywhere near as exploratory as his.
Well, it is funny when you said we all think about it differently, because that's what I've learned. Like, I'll be talking to someone and they'll be explaining a whole concept, and I'll be like, it sounds like you're talking a foreign language to me.
Yeah, right.
Are you talking about just this, and this? Like,
Yeah, and then the way that he puts it too, like the way that he's able to describe it, for me, it clicked. That was one of those things too, where it was, everybody's got a different kind of vibe, personality, their gym culture, like the general ethos of the gym, and even just individual instruction, the way that he was able to, pull out these details in particular movements, it just spoke to me. And that, coupled with how incredible his technique was from my perspective, was enough to make me just head over to train with him. And
gym culture is super important when you're picking a gym, but that's part of the culture usually at a gym that's kind of open-minded and this and that. Usually they're evolving, and
that was him.
Yeah.
Like I said about the open mats, he started, and I was lucky enough to help shape that culture eventually when he asked me to start teaching classes regularly for him.
What belt were you when you started teaching?
I was a purple belt when I met him. So funny enough, I got my purple belt the day before I met him. I had not intended to try and get a purple belt through the gym that I was at. I just didn't really feel like it was my gym anymore. And I was teaching CrossFit at the time, and there was a CrossFit gym that was attached to it was all one business, but it was attached to this gym. And so nobody showed up for class that night. So I went over and I trained jiu-jitsu, and the head instructor there, Bill, he threw me a gi, and he was like, "You're testing tonight." And I just, in retrospect, I probably should have just been like, I got to go do something, or like, I don't want to necessarily do that. But I was teaching for him at the time. I was teaching fundamentals classes, or like beginner classes, as a blue belt. And I tested, and I guess I could have like purposely failed it too, because the way that he tested was, you go through this string of people and you have to submit all of them up to me, and then I'll give you your belt if you have submitted or done well against all of these people.
That's very pragmatic.
Yeah,
just having you roll.
But at the same time, like, what if all the people in class are below you, in terms of their skill level?
No, it's obviously silly. Like, I laugh at it. I wouldn't grade someone that way myself.
No, I wouldn't either. But,
I just laugh at it. Yeah. Like, I had to actually take a test for my blue belt, because I got that under Zé Mario Sfija. And I didn't have to test for anything else until my my red bar on my black belt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a test associated with that, which makes sense. And some people do tests for every
The red bar
belt
is
level.
the teaching, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like then you're not just like a competing black belt or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Like you're teaching.
I feel like I only saw that within the past couple of years, like the white black belt and the red black belt. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of popular for people to wear the white ones in competitions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I still might even wear that if I was competing a gi. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then like the red one is what you actually grade because you have something actually
Yeah.
put on there. Like you don't put white stripes on the white bar.
On the white bar, yeah.
Yeah, but then after a year we get our instructor bars. If you've been a black belt for a year, those
Gotcha.
are the kind of two stripes, but they're just bars, so you're still 0 degree, and then you get your
Mm-hmm.
stripe.
Every 3 years.
like
Yeah.
grading on there.
Yeah, we didn't do that. It was the black belt had the red bar on it already, and
A lot of them are like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the purpose for it. I guess I could also see that if somebody had already been instructing and was exceptional or good at it, competent at it, like they could be given that from the outset.
Yeah. Well, can we agree though? Let's not put red bars on the other belts.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, no. That's funny because one of my roommates.
I've seen a little bit,
One
even
of my
more of
roommates
that
had that
lately.
on his purple belt. He had a red bar on his purple belt,
Yeah.
and I had no idea what it meant at the time. But he was an instructor there, and I think he put it on himself. But I'd seen it a little bit in coming up in Jiu Jitsu.
I mean, people do
Portland.
all different things, but I got to make
do.
fun a little bit. I'm allowed to make fun if you do the red
Yeah.
bar.
I guess there's got to be something to denote that you're an instructor. I don't know.
I looked at it as you always had on there what your next thing you were mainly working for, or what the path you were on, in a sense. And like you have the black bar from all the lower belts.
Yeah.
And then that means you're working on a black belt. And then you have a white bar.
Okay.
Because you're almost on the path of, I'm just competing, I don't need graded. And then you get a red bar when you're actually on a path that might lead to a red belt, which just means, for Kaiki, that meant all of his self-defense curriculum, he wanted to see all of that. He wanted to see all of other aspects and other core fundamental things out of you to really be like, okay, this person's committed to somebody that we could see kind of, because then you start getting graded, and eventually the result is a coral belt followed by a different coral belt followed by a red belt.
If you've done enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how I looked at it, as the red bar, meaning I'm working on a red belt.
That makes sense.
You may never get there, but it's a
Yeah.
mentality too, because like we said, it's like, now it's this endless path after you get there. And it's kind of cool to say I'm working on a red belt, because even to be eligible for it, I think I'd have to be like, well, based on the way that the minimums for each of the bars keeps going up, each of the ranks. So I would have to be like 70 something to actually have a red belt.
All of them are, right?
And then they're all like 70 something, but to say you're working on your red belt, just to say that whether you get there or not, you have a long view of both your longevity to be able to still train it and how you approach it, but that you're always going to be learning in that you have something you're striving for, not that you're at the end of some game as a black belt, that you're just to have a target out there. So
that makes sense. It's so far out there that I put zero thought.
But that's the point.
It.
That's
Yeah.
the point to me, is that it's so far out that it means nothing. But what you're saying is, I have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, that the work is.
It's so far out there.
It's so far out there. Like,
exactly. That's what I'm telling you.
So
to me, that's what the red bar means.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah. All the other stripes and stuff. It's so weird because Aaron was not a big, and I think he got this from John, because I don't think John gives stripes. He was not a big stripes guy himself.
Like no stripes on the black belt.
No, in terms of the colored belts.
Right.
So like I want to say I got 2 stripes on my brown belt before I got my black belt, and maybe 3 on my purple belt before I got my brown belt. And I don't know. Like I've tried to be a little bit more conscious of that myself, just to help people understand that they're getting closer. Because for me, it did get a little frustrating when I was a purple belt, and I think I appreciate him waiting to give me a brown belt. Like in the moment I didn't, because I was, as a purple belt, I was winning brown belt competitions and like doing really well competitively.
Mm-hmm.
And he like pushed it off for a long time, and to the point where I finally stopped caring, and that's when he promoted me like to brown belt. Is when I don't know if he could tell or what, but like
that's how the universe is in general.
right?
When it knows that you just don't give any F anymore, it's like, okay, now you're ready.
It is, you've accepted it. Yeah.
So but do you do any stripes now?
I do. I'm not very good at the colored belt stripes, and in general, like again, he's very slow to promote, and through that I'm also very slow to promote, because I think that my buddy Phil, who I referenced earlier, owns 10th Planet Portland. So the way that he likes to put it is, if there's a wavelength of your jiu-jitsu, you have those, we talked about it earlier, like those peaks and valleys in terms of your own game.
Mm-hmm.
Some weeks you can just feel like trash, and the others you're the champion of the world in your gym. Whatever level it is that you see a blue belt being, like the valleys should just barely dip below that. Like you should be primarily in the blue belt range.
Yeah, you should be trending and like have time in that range.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the grading that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you do similar grading to what Chris does, which is he does actually look at your attendance just to make sure he knows how much you've been coming, because he says he trusts the process.
Yeah.
And then he obviously has just this intangible assessment of where you're at and where you've been trending.
It's so subjective. It's hard to.
But he's taking that slow to promote mentality too, and I always like gyms that are slow to promote.
Same.
That's always my preference.
I think it's you should have time at a certain belt to prove, that you're capable of being at the next one.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more structured in terms of what it is to be a blue belt than any other belt. What the levels of stripes mean from white to blue.
Yes.
More so than from blue to purple, purple to brown, brown to black. Like,
well, that's kind of the first real path is like white to blue, and then it's kind of blue to black.
Yeah, right.
And then it's black to red.
You're just different shades of a color until you get to black. Yeah. I liken it to this is what I tell my students, at least, is I liken it to a battery. If you're a purple belt, like your battery's getting charged on your way up to getting a newer battery, like a bigger, better battery. And your battery can get charged from a, shitty wall outlet that's like barely connected because you're coming to class every 3 weeks one time, or, your training is not purposeful and you're not really trying to get better. Like you're just coming in to get a workout in and, not really paying attention to how to progress. Or you could be getting supercharged and you're here multiple times a day, taking notes on what's going wrong, what's not, and like trying to actually spend time on how do you get better.
Yeah. And those are the people that are going to move through the belts a little faster too, and I think if people are honest with themselves about, and not just getting frustrated, like, oh, so-and-so is this and I'm that, like comparing themselves to others and how long their stuff take. If they're really being honest with themselves, usually they're like, okay, I mean,
and they're the only
what have I been doing? Yeah.
You're the only one on the journey, right?
Yeah,
for
right.
yourself. Yeah.
And obviously, whoever's giving you your belt, it's subjective. Or they might be waiting for a seminar that's 8 months down the line or what. It's like just...
Yeah, that's always an interesting one too, like the timing of it. And I haven't run into this yet. And you referenced Chris, doing attendance, some partially attendance-based, and I think that, like, I'm not at the level yet where I'm not the primary coach or like not the person who's teaching. Yeah,
you see everybody 80% of the for classes, all of them. I think he teaches. I don't know if I would say the majority, but yeah, it's not as much of a mix where you're really primary every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't really put much weight in attendance, but like having that, if I was in his position or somebody who's
Just that
maybe
knowledge.
you're only teaching during the daytime, so you don't really see the people at night, that kind of thing. Then waiting for a seminar makes sense. You can get and you have a big gym, so you can get this whole crop coming up.
Well, we used to wait for a seminar, so we had Kaiki to promote to, depending on what your rank was. But now Chris is like, I think three stripes on his black belt, so I think he can promote other black belts, I think now. So
when did he get his?
When did he get his black belt?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna get this question wrong. Yeah, I'm gonna get that question wrong. It's gonna be like
at least 9
he
years
was,
ago.
I think, a brown belt when I came here in end of 2011, and so he would have probably got his black belt around, I'm gonna say 2013 or I don't know, 2014. See if that's close.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't tell you when exactly Aaron got his black belt either. I know he's had his black belt longer than I've been training though, which is crazy to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's still out there training.
Yeah. I remember when he told me he got his black belt, and I was like, wait a second. I want to say he got his in 2010 or 2009. And I was like, Jesus. Am I ever going to get to this level?
Or you're just mangling people's arms from behind them?
Yeah.
For fun?
Like flipping them upside down and,
Yeah.
doing crazy squirrel things.
I think it's humbling for a lot of people to hear, but I mean, you and I have already had this conversation, but I mean, to hear you say like so many levels to it, So, really, we're all just lucky to be able to train.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to be able to train with the two best black belts in town, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Chris and yourself.
Thank you.
Chris is like master splinter. And always, we're trying to solve one problem the other day with me and Phil, and then he's just like, flips the whole question on its head, like, just like you do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's great to be able to train under both you guys, and you guys are going to keep shaping a lot that's happening here. Fighters that spend some time training at our gym, training at your guys' gym, training with you. There's going to be things happening on the UFC, levels, and on MMA levels, hopefully ADCC levels. You're one of the most accomplished competitors now in the state that we have too. If you just look at like people that accomplished what they did, because you got bronze.
I want to say Guda's probably pretty far more accomplished than I am, isn't he?
The most accomplished in the state is not Guda, though.
No.
It would be Claire North.
Yeah, you're right. Totally.
Yeah, easily.
Absolutely.
Easily the most accomplished in the state. And so she's now set a high water mark as a state. Yeah.
Undercut your accomplishments. Yeah. She's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. So she won Medusa, which is is that the female EBI?
Yeah.
Right? Or it's just his other event.
Did she win the Medusa and the combat version? The Medusa's the combat version, isn't it?
I don't know. Now I'm gonna fail this quiz too. I should have looked that up. But no, she's won some huge tournaments.
Yeah.
And she even won that 3-on-3 in Chicago. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see her compete on an ADCC stage,
I would think that that's what they're going to gear up for. I haven't talked to any of them about that, but
yeah,
hopefully
her and that whole team. I want to see that whole team, venture out and do that. I know they love doing the IBJJF stuff, or they're successful at the IBJJF stuff.
Yeah,
but it seems like they're creeping in that direction. I've trained with John and Claire one time, and I got lucky enough to be able to roll with both of them a handful of times or a couple times, and they're both outstanding, at jiu-jitsu. I think they would both do well in those settings. And I mean, that's becoming more, maybe I'm biased, but that's becoming more of the gold standard in terms of competitive success. Like your IBJJF World Championship doesn't mean as much as an ADCC.
Well, I think in the gi, then it means about the top level, but then in the no gi, it's all taken on a life of its own. Would
you say that the no gi accomplishment of being a ADCC champion is better or not better? That's to me the real world champion. That's the world champion.
Yeah. The runner up, that's the number 2.
Yeah.
Third place, that's number 3. And that's just because I started when, saying I'm only going to compete in no-gi because, like I said, it's hard to keep up with everything. And I have a day job and some other things, this and that going on. It's like, I'm only going to try and stay on the cutting edge of one of these.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other people might have made that call, and
100%.
it was already known that was a more fun version. We have a little bit of a bias, like, I guess, because we like to wrestle around here. Well,
I mean, I would say that it's a primarily no-gi scene here in Des Moines.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of the competitions that are here with Subspectrum and Jordan, and in terms of the highest level competitors in town are no-gi primarily competitors. I don't even know, is there one that's a high level, like in Des Moines itself, that's a gi?
Like a person that's a high level gi competitor?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anybody's actually competing in the gi out of Des Moines.
That's true.
Just even to name someone competing in gi.
That's hard.
Other than
Derek will throw himself in there every once in a while and like a Subspectrum, but he's primarily a no-gi guy.
I thought about throwing one on like for a Subspectrum or something, and so every once in a while I get the thought, but as you can see, it hasn't materialized into. I haven't competed in the gi since I was a purple belt.
Wow.
So that's when I remember quitting distinctly.
Yeah, I did it once. I think once as a black belt for a local competition in Portland. A cool show that a guy named Andy Hung put on, the Dojo Outfitters. You were thinking about doing that, right? A Dojo Outfitters show, or
I may have been. I can't remember.
I feel like there was one.
I would definitely do a gi show if it was right. Whatever, like
he puts on fantastic events.
I don't train in the gi a whole lot, but I always feel good when I put it on. I like all the extra ways that you can choke somebody.
Yeah, it's fun. It can be fun.
It can be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Derek, his gi game I feel like is more advanced in terms of the current state of gi grappling than mine. Derek being brown belt at our gym and the other instructor at our gym, Derek Flagg. But
just because he put more into like what's modern happening in the gi.
Back when we were actually, because for those that don't know, my gym is primarily no gi now. We only do 1 day of gi training per week, and Derek, before we shifted over, was really focused on like developing lapel guards and crucifix stuff and like being able to use his gi more effectively. Whereas I was like, oh, this is too much. I want to roll with Derek in the gi now. Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Well, if I'm thinking about competing, sounds like I should. I'll come
his
to your
worm
guys'
guard
place.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's
hard to
annoying.
deal with.
That's the annoying thing is there was so many guards and stuff to learn. That kind of got me going, just like, ugh, God. But
even
I do
defensively,
like,
trying to deal with it.
There's some things, obviously, there's a lot of commonalities, and like I said, it's fun to be able to choke people, but different ways and hold them down different ways when you normally wouldn't be able to. But then that's the other side of it is they're holding you down.
Yep, absolutely.
Everything's such a problem.
So sticky and slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but it's fun. I still enjoy having it. At least I enjoy having it 1 day a week, but that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Teaching 2 different gi classes in the week. That's plenty.
Yeah, your gym almost completely teaches
no gi. Yeah. I find it a little bit more. I think that it's the trend of jiu-jitsu. It's the way that it's headed. That it's gaining in popularity, and it's going to be the way of the future. Or at least there's going to be a divergence, and there's going to be gyms that do primarily gi and primarily no gi. But for my personal approach, I enjoy a little bit more the self-expression, like the freedom of motion of no gi than gi. It's
kind of like fighting with an odd weapon. It's like, here, throw this jacket on. That's your weapon.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That like the limiter.
Yeah, taking the limits off.
My ability to move, I'm not a huge fan of, and I probably will be when I'm older, when I can't move as well as I can now.
Then you can take your time with your grips
and slow those young guns down, and
I do miss not being able to climb somebody's back. I was on Phil's back in the gi, because we don't get the gi on very often. And I'm just like, it's always easy for me to kind of get that first little bit of that roll, but actually finishing, you know, something and taking his back is tough. He's got a big long, how am I gonna climb? I gotta climb all this, but just took the collar, took the belt. Yeah, grab his hair is what I should start doing. And no gi. Yeah. So that man's a savage, but being able to climb onto him was a lot of fun. You have so many students. I don't know how you attract them, if you put out your bat signal or what, but you have so many students that are absolute like athletes too. You have so many
I mean, I'm just
good athletes keep showing up at your gym.
You know, people that are you know, highly experienced in all levels of athleticism. You know, Jake Pudens, who I'm wearing his shirt, is a national champion Olympic weightlifter, and you know, he's got great jiu-jitsu, and even though he doesn't like to think so, his jiu-jitsu is getting better and better. And
it sounds like you're trying to clarify something, you know?
No, not at all.
I agree with you, by the way.
I know you do, and I heard that during the first podcast that you agreed. But
I'm the one actually out there trying to pass his guard and do all this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He's the one out there playing guard in order to get better at it. And he's the one he shows up to a lot of classes. And
he's there, you know, typically 4 to 5 days a week.
He's tough. So. It doesn't help that he's strong.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't
like otherworldly strong.
You were making a problem for everybody when you kept teaching him technique every single day.
I know, and I try and refine it a little bit more each time, and now it's getting to the point where, like, as I'm teaching him how to beat me, I'm like, God damn, I'm just gonna be underneath him so much longer now. Or he's gonna be squeezing my neck so much harder now.
It's actually hard to teach people. Like, we should maybe get him and some of our big guys together. Mm-hmm. And I actually told some of our big guys, specifically Taylor. I told Taylor, I was like, listen, I keep trying to be like, here, I can push you in this way and that way, but it just keeps hurting me.
You gotta have a bigger body.
Like, it just hurts me.
Yeah.
And I can't explain to you how, you know how you have a tough workout and you need to recover? Like, I'm like that for fucking a week. Mm-hmm. But I want to take him on. I still have that, like, young, dumb mentality. Like, I want to take him on, but I'm telling him, like, you know, we get some of these big guys together, I'll coach you from over here. Yeah, right. You know, like, we could get a little session going for the bigs, you know.
That guy's on another level.
We have the women's only open mat, which is another cool thing here in Des Moines. Mm-hmm. And getting that to grow, and you and me both have daughters, and we want to see that grow 100%. Yeah. But now we should start the other one for people that are just extra size. Yep. Right?
There should be an extra size open mat, and then maybe eventually when we're in that range, the old man open mat or old person open mat.
We'll start hosting that.
Yeah.
50 plus.
But I don't know what happened. Like, there was a weird shift back to the athletic people. Yeah. Where, you know, like Joe Scanlon, who wrestled for Iowa State, you know, there was a moment there where our competition class was Kyvan Gadsden, who was a national champion for Iowa State and a U.S. Open champion. I believe he's U.S. Open champion.
He's coming on the podcast.
Oh, nice. Yep. Yeah, he's a very interesting person.
Yes, going to love that one.
He's going to be a good chat. Then, obviously, very successful competitively. So Kyvan, there was Montel Marion, who was a 2-time runner-up for Iowa. This is all wrestling, obviously. And then they had, and I wasn't here. One of the days there was another Iowa State All-American, and then like a heavyweight from UNI, and I mean all these people that came.
Why did they come to your gym? Are you advertising?
Not advertising at all. Nothing at all. I don't know what it is. I think that maybe word got out that in our competition class we do full wrestling rounds. Mm-hmm. So
they just wanted to like throw down, because some of those guys don't train every single day with you. No. They just like want to throw down on Sunday.
All but everybody except for Joe. Joe's the only one who
but it's so cool that they're all there. Yeah. But you know, even outside of Jake and the wrestlers there, I mean, just always a lot of like athletes at your gym. Obviously, you don't cater only to athletes; you cater to everybody. But I've always thought that was a unique thing about your gym. Is I go there and I'm like,
I don't know what brought
people like to take care of themselves. You know.
Yeah. It was funny the first few pictures, like group photos that we took in the gym over the the first year of being around, some of my old training partners would always comment on them like, what is going on here? I think the first community open mat that I went to, I was sitting in the back and I was kind of leaning against the wall, and there's, Jim, like other giant people on the mat, and people were like, who are these people? This is
the Iowa corn-fed
the
people
corn-fed
here.
people. Like, it's
that's why I think we're gonna have here in Iowa, ADCC at least contender at some point. And this cross pollination, this cross training is part of it. Moving the watermark higher and higher. Yeah. People going Super Saiyan at a younger age.
I mean, if you took somebody like Kyvan, who had such success competitively in wrestling, and you taught him, submission defense and positional awareness in a jiu-jitsu setting, he could do very, very well.
Well, he's our age now.
Yeah.
But he could be
somebody at that level.
Somebody at that level, if you got them even sooner. If you wanted to create like a real problem for people for years to come at the ADCC levels,
name
could easily happen.
X, Y, and Z Iowa wrestler, Iowa State, UNI, whatever, who's an All-American or going to be an All-American, and they decide that they don't want to go to, onto the international wrestling scene. Like they'd rather pursue jiu-jitsu, MMA, then
I hope jiu-jitsu becomes more of a pipeline for them, because they recognize in recent years the MMA pipeline, and that's very lucrative. Jiu-jitsu one, it can be lucrative in its own way. Depends on, there's a million different ways to try and monetize your success. But I'd like to see more and more people get into jiu-jitsu, because they could get good fast.
Less brain trauma.
What's that?
Less brain trauma.
Less brain trauma than doing fighting, yes, for sure. So then you won't have my problems where I'm just extra slow in the head. Huh?
Where?
So
yeah.
Anything else I should bring up here?
No, I mean, this is good. I'd like to let's do it again. Sometime down the line. I feel like I probably skipped over a large portion of my time I did skip over a large portion of my time in Portland and the people I trained with there, and I want to give everybody, their due respect and shine. Because I'm not where I am alone, Aaron, Jin, Larry, people that helped me along the way, friends like Eric Deere and Eddie Jamrod, Nico Hughes.
Well, we just had this said on the last podcast, but no man is an island.
Yeah.
It's very, very apparent to anyone, especially someone such as yourself, has had to go out and try and accomplish things, realize these things are too tough to do alone, and there's too much to handle alone. And you could have an endless list probably of more people you could talk about today. But your gym is Renzo Gracie Academy, Des Moines. Got your website. They can follow you there. They can check out
RGADSM.com. At Renzo Gracie Des Moines on Instagram. I mean, I feel incredibly lucky to be in this town, to have people like you training at the gym, and everybody that does train at the gym, people that help make it successful like Derek. And I think that this is something special, what we have going on here in Des Moines. And I think you're right.
We know that. Few people know that.
It's going to be a good, we're gonna make some moves in the future if we keep this up.
It's just bound to happen if we keep it up. So it's kind of a sleeping giant, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And you kind of seem to be living the dream, the jiu-jitsu dream, and we really love having you. Hopefully you do like it here in Des Moines, because we love having you here.
Yeah,
so.
I love it. Oh, this has been great. My family's here. Like, this is community. The community is amazing.
Yeah. Let's all get dangerous together.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to end it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
This was good.
Thanks for the conversation.